Hello there, dear viewers, and welcome to All 24 Nightly News, coming to you live from Algiers. I'm your host, Karim Fazakari, and up next are the top stories. Algerian Ministry of Defense foils intrusion of 3 jet skis that entered regional area waters, detains driver and pursues 2 fugitives. Ongoing protests against Paris as Niamey's deadline to French forces nears in Niger. Libya rejects normalization with the Zionist entity. An investigation into Mangoush Cohen meeting has been launched. And Ukraine achieves breakthrough in Zaporizhia, shoots down drone squadron in Odessa, while Russian forces recruitment continue the surge. Hello again, and thank you for joining us. First off in our news, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune appointed Mohamed Lagab as Minister of Communications on Sunday. Following consultation with Prime Minister Ayman Ben Abdurrahman and in accordance with the Constitution's provisions, Articles 91, Paragraph 7, 104. The Algerian Ministry of Defense reported that a Coast Guard unit in the 2nd Military Region intercepted 3 jet skis in Algerian waters last Tuesday. Despite multiple warnings and dangerous maneuvers by the jet ski owners, warning shots were fired, and 1 jet ski was eventually stopped, while the others escaped. Following the incident, an unidentified male body with a gunshot wound was found and transferred to Tlemcen Hospital's Mortuary Preservation Service. The Ministry of Defense urged the media, social media users, and citizens not to spread biased news aiming to tarnish the image of the Algerian army. In different news, Algerian Foreign Ministry Secretary General Ounas Moghraman met with U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joshua Harris during his regional visit. They discussed supporting international efforts for a political solution in Western Sahara, self-determination for the Sahrawi people, and developments in the Sahel-Saharan region, particularly the Niger crisis. They also talked about Algerian-American relations, gearing up for the upcoming strategic dialogue session in Washington, slated for October. To other news, social tensions are expected to rise in Morocco on September 4th. Several major educational organizations are threatening to boycott school admissions due to concerns about an unfair new education system. The legal sector is also in turmoil, with the bar associations demanding dialogue. Additionally, frequent fuel price hikes are adding to social unrest. Community organizations are warning that the government needs to address these issues urgently and change its communication approach to avoid further escalation. In the same context, Morocco's trade deficit worsened, surpassing $16.5 billion in the first 7 months of this year, marking a more than 6.5 annual increase. The energy bill for July alone reached $6.9 billion. Additionally, foreign direct investments into Morocco declined by over 53% in the same period, totaling $843 million from January to July. To other African development now, the Military Council in Niger has set a deadline for French forces to leave the country, which expires on Sunday. This deadline coincides with ongoing protests in front of the French military base, where demonstrators demand the end of France's military and diplomatic presence in Niger. The details with Osama Yedi.
A two-day final ultimatum expired on Sunday for the French troops and ambassador to withdraw from Niger. This is the second deadline issued by the Military Council for former colonial power to drag back its forces and ambassador to Dutch expulsion and expatriation.
The truth must be said. France is about to make a serious mistake. It did not sign agreements with the regime, but with the state. And if its ambassador does not recognize the military authorities, why does he remain here? The French ambassador is currently considered as an illegal immigrant in Niger.
Thousands of pro-coup protesters have taken to the streets during the last 2 days to voice their refusal for France's presence in the country. Many had held banners against French troops and authorities to request quick withdrawal from Niger.
C'est tout à fait normal aujourd'hui.
It is natural for the people of Niger to demand the departure of French military bases, and it is natural for them to take away their true independence. These bases that exist illegally must leave.
For his part, French President Emmanuel Macron had refused all calls and affirmed that his country has no intention to pull back its ambassador. In reaction to the president's final announcements, the military leaders had cut water and power supply from the French embassy in Niamey.
As for France's refusal to leave under the pretext of not recognizing the legitimacy of the new authorities, neither the French regime nor the French authorities have the authority to grant or strip legitimacy to the Nigerian authorities. This is an exclusive right for the people of Niger.
An anti-former colonial power sentiment is on the rise in Africa, and many African countries are revolting against the French influence and presence on their lands, creating a potential war of strategic interests.
In a similar context, former Prime Minister of Niger, Hama Hamadou, praised Algeria's initiative to resolve the crisis in Niger as the best and closest to achieving a political settlement since the crisis began. In video statements to French magazine L'Opinion, Amadou highlighted Algeria as the most suitable mediator to persuade the military group and the ECOWAS to engage in direct negotiations based on Algeria's initiative.
I believe that the Algerian initiative is the best initiative that has been proposed since the beginning of the crisis, which was supposed to be taken by ECOWAS instead of the military threat. I think that the Algerian president had the most appropriate initiative. But what is expected now is to convince the countries of the Economic Community of West African states. All that remains now is negotiation, and I believe that Algeria can play this role. If we look at ECOWAS, we find that it has cut off all avenues of negotiations. But Algeria can mediate between the military coup leaders and ECOWAS.
Ils ont une attitude très fermée, mais l'Algérie peut jouer le médiateur entre les militaires, la CEDEAO.
And in another pressing issue, Gabon's transitional leader, General Brice Nguema, announced plans to create a new constitution with broad public participation. During a press conference attended by local and international media, he connected the scheduling of presidential elections to the constitution's completion and the establishment of electoral mechanism. Here's Islam Said.
Streets in the capital Libreville and Port-Gentil, the second largest Gabonese city, seem to be calmer after crowds following the coup went to celebrate the end of Bongo's reign and chanting slogans against France. Now Mr. Nguema, who was installed by the Gabonese Military Council as transitional president, will be sworn in on Monday.
C'est d'abord une joie déjà.
First of all, I'm delighted because for so many years it's been really complicated. Now we're hoping that the new reforms will also bring us satisfactions in terms of the way we live and try to improve things. So we really expect a lot from them. That they erase everything that's happened, that they put things right on a new footing, and that it's the best it can be for everyone.
Gabon's transitional president, General Brice Nguema, says the military group that ousted President Ali Bongo will take its time to conduct elections to avoid repeating mistakes of the past and pledge to restore Republican and constitutional order through the establishment of electoral systems and a new constitution, the drafting of which will include everyone.
Le Comité pour la transition et la restauration des institutions.
The Transition and Institutional Restoration Committee is working to restore the dignity of the people of Gabon, and this undoubtedly passes through establishing strong institutions and organizing free, transparent, fair and credible elections that are subject to the will and sovereignty of the people. When I say strong institutions, this means a constitution that meets the aspirations of the Gabonese people, who have suffered for a long time. It was oppressed and torn apart. We must also review the election law.
Canceling the results of the presidential elections, according to General Brice Nguema, was a way to avert bloodshed and to defend peace by putting an end to the current regime, since the elections were overshadowed by a lack of international observers, raising concerns about transparency.
Et le bain de sang qui était attendu.
And what about bloodshed that would have occurred if we had not intervened to stop this massacre? The elections were rigged. Yes, they were rigged. And I assure you that Ali Bongo did not win fairly, even in light of this tailored electoral system. Ali Bongo won through fraud, and that is why we decided cancelling the election results. This cancellation applies to everyone, not just Bongo, and therefore whoever considers himself a winner must wait for the next election and will get the same result of the votes. Everything we did was for the safety of our homeland and to spare bloodshed of the Gabonese.
The coup has added concerns about a military takeover across the region, which has witnessed state coups since 2020. This coup in Gabon is yet another echo of growing wave of resentment towards former colonial power France and its influence in the region. Western powers who are trying to safeguard their strategic interests are warning that such military coups will have severe consequences, not only for Africa, but for other continents as well.
We remain in Africa still. In Mali, security forces foiled a terrorist attack near Bamako on Sunday, resulting in injuries to one policeman and two civilians. The attack occurred at Diala Kuruba in the Kolikuru region, approximately 50 kilometers east of the capital. Two on-duty policemen successfully repelled the attackers, neutralizing one terrorist in the process. Algerian ambassador to Libya, Souleymane Chanin, emphasized the need for a peaceful Libyan-led resolution to the crisis. He expressed Algeria's support for the Presidential Council's efforts in achieving political consensus and commended their progress in national reconciliation. The meeting also covered political developments, the Presidential Council's reconciliation efforts, and strategies for consensus and elections. Additionally, they discussed the impact of neighboring African countries' current situations on both nations. The Libyan Presidential Council, represented by Abdullah Lafi, reaffirmed its unwavering stance on the Palestinian issue, emphasizing both official and public rejection of normalization with the Zionist entity. This was conveyed during a meeting with Algerian ambassador to Libya, Souleymane Chanin, at the Council's office in Tripoli on Sunday. The Council's commitment to supporting the Palestinian cause and opposing normalization was stated in a Facebook post by the Council. Still with Libya, Libyan Attorney General Sadiq Assour has formed an investigation committee to look into the meeting between dismissed Foreign Minister Najlan Mangoush and Zionist Foreign Minister Al-Kohen in Italy. The committee will assess potential harm to Libyan state interest based on intelligence reports and gather evidence, including statements from the involved ones in the meetings. In occupied Palestine, the Supreme Emergency Committee of the National Prisoner Movement has announced an open hunger strike beginning on September 14th. The hunger strike aims to protest against policies and decisions that actually have restricted prisoners and to demand the restoration of the rights that were previously revoked by the Zionist entity. Here's Zahra Farjani with more.
Another oppressive decision taken by the Zionist entity against Palestinian prisoners detained in Israeli jails stirs controversy and causes a wave of condemnation. As a response to this coercive act, Palestinian detainees decided to speak up against this blatant violation of their right, cutting the frequency of family visits. Hence, they are set to begin an open-ended hunger strike to object the decision. The Palestinian Supreme Emergency Committee of the Prisoners' National Movement announced on Sunday that the strike will begin on September 14th and aims to demand the restoration of rights denied by the new draconian policies.
This ignorant extremist Itamar Ben-Gvir appears before us with a new decision, reducing visits of our families to once every 2 months. We as Palestinians have legitimate rights that are not subject to negotiation. Hence, the Supreme Emergency Committee of the Prisoner National Movement decided to embark on an open hunger strike on Thursday, September 14th, 2023, demanding an end to all decisions and policies taken to restrict us and the conditions of our lives, as well as the return of all our rights that were taken away during the past period.
The same party called on the Palestinian people to support the prisoners in their next steps, underlining their rights are not a subject of negotiation and that they should be ready for any case scenario as long as the occupation of their land continues.
The unity that the prisoner movement embodied during the last 2 years was the guarantee in repelling the aggression against us, which we seek to consolidate more and more, day after day, and which we hope will extend to all fields of Palestinian action, and which we expect to be embodied through our people supporting us in this battle.
In turn, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry called on international community to put pressure on the occupying Zionist entity to halt all illegal unilateral measures, indicating that turning a blind eye to settlers' crimes and the failure to implement United Nations resolutions encourage the occupation to deepen the cycles of their apartheid regime.
In another development, an airstrike on a residential area in Khartoum, Sudan's capital, killed at least 20 civilians, including 2 children. Meanwhile, a liquidity crisis has worsened, hindering access to basic necessities due to bank closures, making the lives of the surviving residents in the war very hard. Here's Salman Nasib with more.
New clashes occurred in Sudan between the army and the rapid support forces, using heavy artillery in the Bekir area, south of Khartoum and in Omdurman, west of the capital. The heavy clashes resulted in the death of 5 civilians, a day after 20 others were killed, including 2 children, according to the Resistance Committee.
The death toll from the aerial bombardment on Saturday has risen to 12 civilian fatalities. Many bodies charred and torn to pieces by the bombing could not be transported to the hospital.
As the fighting doesn't seem to let up, hunger is threatening now the life of many Sudanese. As a matter of fact, this state of war made citizens' life impossible. As the economic crisis heightens, fewer and fewer people are able to afford as little to eat as bread.
The reason why there is a lot of bread on the shelves is because people aren't able to buy it. People here do not buy in large quantities, and those who came from Omdurman itself cannot buy bread because they don't have cash. People are suffering. The customer who used to buy bread with 500 Sudanese pounds is no longer coming.
Many people, like this Sudanese employee, claim they have not been paid for 4 months, as the government's budget was decimated by the war.
We have not received our salaries for 4 or 5 months, which created an abundance in food products of all sorts, including wheat, as well as all other products in Omdurman. But the real problem is that people are not able to buy because simply they don't have money.
Living in Sudan's largest cities became unbearable as fighting is increasing gradually. Hence, fleeing to a place that would guarantee their survival has become the only way for those who could.
The general coordinator of the Spanish People's Party, Elias Bendudu, accused outgoing Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of jeopardizing Spain's unity in order to stay in power. Bendudu warned that Sanchez's efforts to remain in power might actually result in a divided country with separatists in the government who aim to dismantle Spain.
Sánchez está dando alas a la amnistía.
Sanchez cannot create first and second-rate Spaniards with the aim of remaining in the chair of Moncloa. His goal is to sit in the chair and think about the way he will go down in history. Sanchez says yes to everything to the nationalists and separatists whom he intends to include in the government and in decision-making, even though their goal is to dismantle Spain.
In Iraq, 4 people died and 15 were injured in clashes between ethnic groups in Kirkuk. These clashes erupted during a protest by Kurdistan Democratic Party supporters demanding the reopening of the Erbil-Kirkuk highway and control of a joint operations building. The Iraqi Prime Minister called for an investigation and lifted the curfew imposed earlier in Kirkuk. The city's operations command building is now under Iraqi army control, leading to the dispersal of Arab and Turkmen demonstrators. To the Russia-Ukraine file now. On Sunday, the Ukrainian army claimed to have breached the first Russian defense line in the Zaporizhia region in southeastern Ukraine, with Russian forces reportedly retreating to a second, less fortified line. However, a Russian army spokesperson denied the breach, stating that their forces repelled 4 Ukrainian attacks in residential areas in the province. In the same context, the Ukrainian Air Force reported destroying 22 Russian drones that targeted port infrastructure in the Odessa region. A spokesperson for the Southern Command of the Ukrainian Army explained that the attack aimed at the province's port facilities, including those along the Danube River, used for exporting grains. The attack lasted for 3.5 hours and caused 2 injuries. Despite Russian threats, a 3rd cargo ship has departed from Ukrainian ports and is currently positioned near Bulgarian territorial waters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that 2 cargo ships have successfully left southern Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea using the commercial shipping corridor designated by Kiev. Moscow had previously warned that it might consider all ships in the area as potential military targets after withdrawing from a grain export agreement in June. In response, Ukraine has announced that the operation of the humanitarian corridor along the western coast of the Black Sea, avoiding international waters. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced on Sunday the downing of MiG-29 fighter belonging to the Ukrainian forces in Zaporizhia. The Defense Ministry in a statement revealed that it had shot down a Ukrainian drone that attempted to attack facilities in Belgorod district. Additionally, authorities confirmed the attack did not result in any injuries nor damages. Deputy Chairman of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, stated on Sunday that about 280,000 people have signed contracts since the beginning of the year to provide professional services to the Russian army. He added during a visit to the far east of Russia that he met with local officials to work on efforts to strengthen the armed forces. Medvedev also indicated that according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, since January 1st, about 280,000 have been accepted into the ranks of the armed forces on contractual basis, including reserve soldiers.
This time I am meeting with the heads of the subjects of the Federation in person, bearing in mind the importance of the work on restaffing the armed forces with contract servicemen. According to the Ministry of Defense, since January 1st, about 280,000 people have been accepted into the ranks of the armed forces, partly those who are in reserve, partly volunteers.
Time for the news in brief.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan arrived in Iran on Sunday in his first visit to Tehran since his appointment to his position last June. The Iranian news agency stated that Fidan met with the Iranian Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian to discuss bilateral, international and regional issues. North Korea conducted a simulated tactical nuclear attack drill on Saturday that included 2 long-range cruise missiles. According to North Korea's central news agency, the two cruise missiles carrying mock nuclear warheads were fired towards the western sea of the Korean peninsula. Russian local media reported on Sunday that a huge fire broke out in the fuel depot in the city of Petersburg, northwestern Russia. The Russian Emergencies Ministry announced that no injuries were recorded in the accident. Additionally, eyewitnesses said that plumes of smoke could be seen from different parts of the city and that sounds of explosions were heard in the scene. France will be in less than a week away from hosting the 10th edition of the Rugby World Cup, an edition that coincides with the anniversary of the invention of the sport. The event will be a real test for Paris a year before the Summer Olympics 2024, especially after the security crisis that struck the country.
That concludes today's program. For the latest updates, check our social media channels. Thank you for tuning in and join us tomorrow again for more news. Take care.